Hello everyone, what's up? Jubitaz back with a new video, where today we're doing another video that keeps up with the themes of this channel. Now, one of the best things about Naruto was how nuanced the storytelling was. Even though it was told from the Leaf's perspective, Kishimoto has shown us through Nagato's point of view the dark side of Konoha. And as the story progressed, we got to see more and more of the flaws and the problems with the Shinobi system and the hidden villages. The main distinction between them and the Akatsuki were that the Akatsuki are rogue, stateless actors that caused mayhem. Other than that, they were all responsible for some pretty heinous or evil acts. That's almost in the nature of all Shinobi, who are all just killers for hire, backstabbing each other whenever that would benefit the home team, and even screwing over their own people sometimes. However, out of all the Shinobi villages, which one was the most evil, the most depraved? Well, today we're going to take a look at all the 5 great nations, assess all the vile or heinous acts they're responsible for, and determine which were the most evil villages. Now, I might also look at some filler events for the other villages since they're more obscure than Konoha. And now, before you begin, make sure that you're subscribed to not miss out on any future video, and other than that, let's get straight to it. So I've already made a couple videos discussing whether the Leaf Village was evil, since it's the main village. The first was my "Is the Leaf Village evil?" and the other was the Konoha Propaganda Exposed video. And some of the comments pointed out that this wasn't unique to the Leaf, which is facts. We just get to see more of the inner politics and dynamics of Konoha, so its flaws are a lot more on display. Doesn't really mean that the other nations are much better or more moral. The narrative itself seems to imply that all the other nations were unethical in their own right, and that they're all partially to blame for all the instability and for the Akatsuki. For example, when Sasori was defeated by Sakura and Chiyo, Sasori's grandmother blamed Sasori's cold indifference to human life and suffering on the customs and teachings of the Sand Village. They were the ones that turned him into this killing machine in the first place. He was named Sasori of the Red Sand because he painted the desert battleground red with his victims' blood after he was done with them. The Hidden Sand was the poorest of the great nations, and because of that, they had to compensate by strengthening their shinobi training curriculum, and in turn, they produced a lot of cold-blooded killers for shinobi. This is best personified with Gaara, the would-be 5th Kazekage. Because he harbored the One-Tails, Gaara faced immense discrimination and countless assassination attempts from the village higher-ups, which makes Naruto's treatment by the villagers as a kid sound heavenly in comparison. The Sand Village were even more discriminatory towards their Jinchuriki. Even the first Jinchuriki of the Tailed Beast was caged and under 24/7 surveillance. Despite the rumors that he was a vengeful priest that hated his village due to his imprisonment, Bonpoku was a peaceful monk that harbored no ill will towards the sand nor to the Shukaku. Gaara, on the other hand, had a tougher upbringing, isolated and shunned by everyone, and having to fend off assassins on a daily basis sent by his own father, no less. That turned him into a mass murderer that didn't hesitate to kill anyone that got in his way. He believed that his purpose in this world was to kill others and only look out for himself. This was the same thing the Sand Village did to Sasori. It was Naruto's compassion and acknowledgement of Gaara's pain that was able to snap him out of it, and that made him question his methods and strive to be better. And even after Gaara changed for the better and became one of the most righteous characters, the elders of the Sand Village never let go of their past grievances with Gaara and kept plotting behind his back, despite the fact that it was their policies and their treatment of him that turned him into that monster in the first place. The Sand Elders resembled the ones of Konoha in their hardliner ideology. And if we look at the anime, they were willing to go as far as to conspire with rebel factions to pull off assassination attempts against the Kazekage, all because of his past that they couldn't let go of. And this wasn't even it for the deplorable attempts pulled off by the Sand's ruling class in the anime filler. there. If we look at Pakura of the Sand's backstory, for example, despite the fact that she was seen as a hero in the eyes of the public, she was sent on a scandalous assignment by her village higher-ups to supposedly act as an ambassador to negotiate with the Hidden Mist. However, this rendezvous turned out to be an ambush where she was betrayed and killed. And to make matters worse, Rasa and the Sand Elders fabricated a lie and said that it was the Hidden Stone that was responsible, in order to justify their desire for war against the Hidden Stone. The Hidden Sand and the Hidden Stone were longtime rivals. The Stone Village was also another nation infamous for its scandalous affairs. Well, maybe not as bad as the Leaf or the Mist, but the Stone had its own forms of corruption and was an enemy of every other hidden village. Iwagakure was seen as unreliable by the other nations and had an aggressive military policy. The shinobi that hailed from this village were seen as stubborn and hard-headed as stone. It was usually a belligerent force in the ninja wars, and this is best exemplified in the Third Great War, when the Stone invaded the small neighboring nation of the Grass as a stronghold in order to use it as a front against the Leaf. This village was willing to do whatever to get their edge against its enemies. For example, in the anime filler, after the Leaf was greatly weakened from the Konoha Crush invasion, the Hidden Stone was ready to pounce on that opportunity to capitalize on Konoha's weakened state. And it wasn't only Konoha that was in Iwagakure's crossfires. The Sand and the Stone were quite hostile to each other, and they had a lot of skirmishes along their borders. They also had a scandalous relationship with the Mist, and in the filler, on a joint mission between the Stone and the Mist against the Cloud, betrayed the Mist by stealing the spoils of the mission for themselves and killing their Mist counterparts. And speaking of scandals, one thing that the Hidden Stone was infamous for was that they would sometimes hire the Akatsuki for missions that the Stone couldn't be directly involved in, which is why a lot of the other nations did not trust them. The third Tsuchikage Onoki had become a bitter old geezer that lost his ways because he didn't trust the other nations like the Leaf or the Cloud. He stooped to their level and became okay with using nefarious or underhanded methods for the benefit of his village. And it was likely his close collaboration with the Akatsuki that led them to gather intel and easily capture the Stone's Jinchuriki. However, as evil as those two villages were, they kind of pale in comparison to the next one, a longtime rival of Iwagakure, that being the Mist Village. The village hidden in the mist was literally called the Blood Mist because of how depraved and barbaric it was. While the Sand Village was the poorest, the Mist was the most unstable because of the violent means and traditions that the village was founded on. Even something as simple as the graduation exam for the Ninja Academy was turned into brutal death matches. All of that was an act of mental conditioning. Young ninja that grew up alongside each other were now told to kill each other in order to graduate. That's how they turned them into shinobi tools. If the child manages to kill his classmates, the ones he grew up with, then he could sever the link to his emotions and become the perfect ninja tool, carrying out any mission assigned to him by the state, regardless of how unethical it may be. This brutal graduation ceremony had to be discontinued once Zabuza massacred an entire graduating class, but by then the damage was already done. All the shinobi that hailed from the mist were savages, bloodthirsty, and apathetic to human suffering or death because that's how they were raised. They were all bred to be cold-blooded killers. That's what makes the Mist a top contender for the most evil village. Eventually, things got so chaotic in the Mist that many of the shinobi, like members of the 7 Ninja Swordsmen and the 6 Tails Jinchuriki, deserted the village to escape the madness. And in response, the Mist Village created the Hunternin, a specialized subsect of the Yambu that was tasked with hunting down the rogue ninja of the Mist and killing them. A lot of the atrocities of the Bloody Mist era get blamed on the 4th Mizukage Yagura, and while his reign was very brutal and pushed the village to its lowest point, Yagura didn't start the Blood Mist. If anything, he was a product of it. He too had to go through the barbaric graduation ritual, and the man that controlled him and turned him into a tyrant was also hurt by the mist. So this means that the chaos and evil of the mist preceded these two, possibly with Madara and the 3rd Mizukage, or even earlier, as far back as the founding of the village. It was stated in the Kakashi Hiden novel by Keo, a former Kiri ninja, that the Hidden Mist was founded on laws of discrimination and oppression. a castle system where the original founders of the Mist were on top and the families of the clans defeated and annexed into the Mist in the bottom, and those of the lowest class were treated with caution and handed the most dangerous assignments to keep them occupied and prevent them from revolting. This discriminatory policy could also be seen with how the Yuki clan was treated by the village. Despite being an asset in war times, after things would settle down, the Kekkei Genkai wielding clan was persecuted for their fearsome abilities by their fellow villagers, and most of the clan were killed except for a select few that chose to go into hiding and not reveal their abilities to the world. This was similar to the treatment the Jinchuriki faced because of their status as walking weapons of mass destruction, or the fate that the Uzumaki suffered due to their powerful sealing jutsu, or the persecuting and ensuing massacre that was carried out against the Uchiha clan because of their powerful Kekkei Genkai. Those that possessed powerful abilities were feared and loathed by the populace of the hidden villages. At the end of the day, the Mist became so disorderly and volatile that it took an isolationist foreign policy, which is why characters like Madara and Obito were able to influence events that happened there with ease. And hence, I believe most of the atrocities carried out by the Mist were in domestic affairs, not foreign ones, except for the Rin incident, of course. Now, one village that was the opposite of that, in that most of the crimes and evil deeds they committed were against foreigners rather than locals, is the Hidden Cloud. And I recently put out a video about the Cloud where I already touched up on all of this, but basically, as a part of their bid for power, the Hidden Cloud was involved in a lot of scandals when it came to dealing with the other great nations. The Cloud has this one nasty habit in particular of kidnapping little girls that possessed special abilities in order to seize those abilities for themselves. They did that with Kushina Uzumaki when she was just 12, and they did the same thing with Hinata when she was only 3. And even then, when the kidnapper was killed in response, they faked outrage and demanded Hiyashi Hyuga's head just so that they could get their hands on the Byakugan. So the way that the Cloud dealt with this situation displays how power-hungry and aggressive their foreign policy was. And speaking of an aggressive foreign policy, when the second Raikage tried to break off of that and form a peace treaty with the Leaf's second Hokage, the Gold and Silver brothers staged a coup and attacked the two leaders. And based on the following reactions and many other factors, I believe that the brothers had backing from a strong faction from within the Cloud behind the scenes. And as a sign of proof of that, the Cloud sent the group named the Kinkaku Force to finish off the job and kill the second Hokage towards the end of the first war. This was the dark side of the Cloud Village, all their warmongering and scandals against the other nations. Now, we don't have any stories of domestic persecution, so I don't think they were as bad as the Mist or the Leaf in that regard. That doesn't mean that discrimination in a general sense didn't occur there. If we look at B's past, he seemed to face the same ostracization and marginalization that Naruto faced due to being a Jinchuriki. B just had an unbreakable spirit and didn't give a fuck. But this is more so to show that all the villages were awful in that sense, at least towards Jinchuriki. And getting back to the main guys, the Hidden Leaf Village. Now, I've already made several videos talking about the disparity or the darker side of Konoha, so you could check out my Is the Leaf Village Evil or my Konoha propaganda videos if you want to see more details regarding this subject, but I'll still briefly touch upon the main points here. The Leaf Village's darkness was foreseen as far back as its founding days by its own co-founder Madara Uchiha. The first Hokage Hashirama believed that the village served a critical role. It created order out of chaos. It was meant to be a way to keep children from being sent to the battlefield. Hashirama was a kind and understanding man that genuinely meant well. However, unfortunately, his successors saw his kindness as naivete, he was the more pragmatic one, and sadly, he was too arrogant to see the fault or potential backlash that could result from his policies. He started the academy that prepared children to be sent on the front lines to die, undoing Hashirama's one goal. He segregated the Uchiha and made them into the police force that didn't hold real power and was under constant surveillance, and this would eventually lead to their demise. He also created one of the most evil and foul jutsu known to man, a jutsu that would go on to be a great source of pain down the line. And his students who inherited his worst traits would go on to become the unlikable oligarchs of Konoha, hardliners that had no compassion. who didn't put any effort into negotiating with the Uchiha clan, unilaterally blamed them for the Nine Tails incident and then greenlit their massacre. Danzo was in particular the worst one. And despite what some Tobiramatards would try to say to justify his actions, Danzo effectively used the cover of protecting the leaf to carry out heinous crimes and atrocities that came back to bite the leaf in the ass, and worsened the leaf's image considerably. The leaf already had a shaky image, but his meddling in the Rain Village put the leaf on Pain's list, and when he went to the orphanage and forcibly recruited the retired wandering nun, threatening to cut funding to it, despite the fact that this orphanage was set up to pay for the leaf's crimes and take care of the victims of its wars that were left as orphans, Danzo revealed his true colors to the audience. He was willing to do whatever to achieve his twisted version of protection of the leaf, no matter what moral lines were crossed, and ready to dispose of whomever. Both Nona and Kabuto's fate were sealed a while back. Now Danzo did a lot of selfish acts, but at times he did commit those crimes for the leaf's sake, so that means that the moral backlash falls on the leaf's shoulders. And while Danzo was the main source of evil in the village, he wasn't the only source. There's Koharu and Hamura that approved of his underhanded ways and were involved in his corruption. There's the third Hokage that allowed Danzo to pull all those stunts under his reign. There's even the average villagers that didn't hesitate to join in this group bully mentality and ostracization, like what they did to Sakamoto for failing that mission, or what they did to Naruto for being the Jinchuriki, like all the other villages. And I already said many times, this attitude wasn't unique to one nation. All of the villages had their dark side. The entire Shinobi system did, and many of the antagonists in Naruto highlighted the issues of this flawed system. The 4 other great nations were modeled after Konoha. It only makes sense that they would all share these flaws. The same could be most likely said about the smaller hidden villages, though they're usually too obscure for us to have a lot to talk about. The Hidden Rain was more of a victim of evil than anything. The Hidden Sound was clearly notorious, and most of the village consisted of hideouts where Orochimaru would experiment on and torture live test subjects. The Hidden Waterfall sent Kakuzu to send the strongest and most peaceful man, and when he failed, they jailed him and tortured him. And the Hidden Grass, we did see a bit of it in Karin's Infinite Tsukuyomi dream, and while it was filler, what we saw from it can't be described as anything other than pure evil. They basically worked Karin's mom until she died, and then afterwards they dragged Karin to replace her instead, where all the adult soldiers of the village would bite on her body and suck the life out of her, while she was a kid. Like, it's genuinely the most disturbing backstory of any character. The Hidden Grass could get the title of the most evil village because of this one feat alone. But let's be real, I'm not gonna take the filler feat that much into heart. Going back to the title of this video, which hidden village is the most evil? Well, that's a good question. And frankly, all of the nations are evil in their own way. Even the more relatively tame ones like the Sand and the Stone had a couple of crimes and evil deeds under their belt. The Cloud was kinda messed up with their kidnapping attempts, but it wasn't the most evil. I don't really want to get into the smaller hidden villages since they were likely all subjects of war and dominated by the greater nations. You could maybe give the title of the most evil to the Hidden Mist by reputation alone. It was called the Blood Mist for a reason. Though like the smaller nations, that was mostly due to the instability and internal conflicts it suffered from. You could honestly call Konoha the most evil just because of Danzo's actions. This was a vile man that used the protection of the leaf as a justification for whenever he did something evil. Though the scales are balanced against Konoha in this argument, as it is the protagonist's hometown, so it gets disproportionately more screen time than the other nations, so we can see more of their flaws. I'm sure all the hidden villages are evil in one way or another. It's in their nature as shinobi villages. Now, if you guys want to see why I'm leaning towards Konoha, then may I suggest my Konoha propaganda video? It's a fan favorite here on the channel, but other than that, I think I'm done for today. Make sure to leave a like or comment if you've enjoyed this content, and other than that, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.